President Zelenskyy, thank you so much for joining us, for coming on Newsmax. We do appreciate your time. I want to just start with an update on the war as everything stands tonight.
The situation is very complicated, and first of all, let me extend words of gratitude for arriving today to Kiev, to the capital city of Ukraine, because it's very difficult to understand the war while being 1,000 kilometers away. But you can see the Kiev as a calm city. At the same time, the situation around our country and the situation outside of the capital, because we've pressed the enemy outside of the capital city. Well, the situation is difficult. The most difficult situation is in east of Ukraine, in Severodonetsk, in Lysychansk. This is the names of cities in the regions of the east of Ukraine, and the situation in the east is very difficult. We're losing 60 to 100 soldiers per day as killed in action, and something around 500 people as wounded in action. So we are holding our defensive perimeters. Speaking about the Kharkiv region, the situation is different. We are counterattacking, we're pressing, and we've almost reached the distance of 20 kilometers to the national border between Ukraine and Russia, and there we are having some very effective steps against Russians.
So, the update with the war, you've managed to push this fight away from cities like the capital, like Kyiv. It has now been contained mostly to areas that are far from here. Do you find that to be, is that progress in your mind?
Well, a lot depend on the integrity of our people. So we needed to have a unity in between of the people and the armed forces. Everyone could clearly understand this. That's the capital of any city. If the capital city will fall, then the state would fall. And so pressing the enemy outside, pressing Russians outside of the Kyiv region, that was a very important step, a breakthrough step. But once again, I would like to reiterate that that's not a war, and there could be also a reverse wave, so to say, if they will launch an attack, and those attacks, they keep mounting and mounting, and if we won't be able to hold on our defensive perimeter in the east, then we might have, well, once again, a possibility of their launching attacks in different regions.
Our president, Joe Biden, initially said he was not going to give rockets that would be capable of reaching Russia. Which doesn't make any sense because Russia is a bordering country to Ukraine. The White House has clarified, saying that they will be giving the multiple launch rocket system to your country, just not long-range rockets. What is your response to that?
In order to deblock the occupied south of our Ukraine, in order to deoccupy the eastern territories, as well as to deoccupy the ports of Ukraine that were occupied by the enemies. And through those ports, we could be exporting million tons of grain. Otherwise, we might face a food crisis. Currently, 22.5 million tons of grain are blocked by the Russia. In order to deblock this territory with an exit to the sea, with an exit to water, with an exit to our people, we need to fight, and we need to have weapons with effective range of fire of 120, 140 kilometers. Without the MLRS, this is something that is absolutely impossible. And that is why we've requested from the European Union, from the European countries, from the United States, from the President directly, from the White House, we're requested to have those weapons. And of course, we understand that agreeing to supply us MLRS, that would be a chance for all of our people, and those people are having troubles. They're significantly affected. They don't have access to water, food, and other supplies, and we cannot reach them physically. But as what he said, that the effective range of fire would be a small one for those MLRS, that would be a dangerous situation for us. I know what the people in the United States are saying, or someone in the White House are saying, that we might be using them to attack Russia. Look, we are not planning to attack Russia. We're not interested in Russian Federation. We're not fighting on their territory. We have a war on our territory. They came to our country. We want to deblock our cities, and for that purpose we need MLRS with the effective range of fire of over 100 kilometers.
So if I understand right, I mean, right now there is a threat of a worldwide famine because so much of the grain and wheat comes from this country. You're saying you need long-range missiles so that you're going to be able to export a lot of this grain and wheat to the rest of the world.
That's it. That's right. I mean, we do need to deblock our cities, of course. These cities in the south of our country, and they have exit to the sea. And you know that Mariupol has been ruined completely, and the Odessa is currently blocked. It's not occupied, but it's blocked from the sea, and that is why we cannot exit from the seaports of Odessa. And despite any international treaties, everything is under control by the Russian Black Sea Fleet. That's what is happening, and at this point we cannot move our ships from our ports. I mean, to have them carrying the grain, barley, sunflower seeds and many other aspects. And for the African countries, for the Asian countries and the Asian market, we already know that they have a deficit in the 40 countries, and this is only the beginning. So at this moment we have a deficit in 40 countries that they will face significant challenges. We're talking about millions and millions of people who are facing with the risk of famine, and Russia is not allowing anyone to go inside the Black Sea. We cannot see any exporters, any ships of a single country who could come up and take and remove the grain and take the grain out of us. It's not the issue of money only, because it's dozens of millions of dollars for us that we could receive as the result of the exporting of the grain. But we already have a significant deficit of our budget, like a $5 billion US dollars at least per month. So the question is not about money. We're ready to give the grain and to receive the money later on. We want not to have a crisis in the world, and Russia is blocking all that.
Do you think that different American leadership, do you think that different Western leadership may have prevented this aggression? There are many Americans that believe that if somebody like Donald Trump were still in the White House, that this invasion would not have happened. What is your position?
Well, I believe what's the most important is the assistance from the people of the United States. They are paying the taxes, and the money being allocated to support Ukraine comes from taxes, and it's all about the humanitarian, financial, military support to Ukraine. So I'm grateful to the current President of the United States, as well as to both of the political parties that support us. Sorry if I'll be saying something that you don't like, but for us as the country in war, it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans. It's the people of the United States that support us, and in this time we thinking of that. When there is a unified position, when there is a strong position of a party to Ukraine, then it's important for Ukraine. And it's not that we're willing to take any risks, because those risks could create many problems for Ukraine. So I don't know what would happen if Donald Trump would be the president for the United States at this situation, so I cannot predict what would happen. But the values of the United States, they're all the same. I mean, any person could become a president. Some might like Ukraine more, some less, some might have respect to Putin, some might not, but the values that our country is fighting for are definitely the ones shared by the United States, and it's truly important that the United States still have the institutions working despite whoever comes to power. The institutions are working, the senators are working, the Congress is working. It's very important that they're supporting Ukraine.
For many Americans, they look at, we have a massive inflation problem in our country. We have massive debt in our country. They look at the spending on this war, and they wonder, why has this war become their war? The spending more than any other country on this war. $40 billion is the latest spending bill attached to this war. What do you say to Americans that want to know why Ukraine's war with Russia has become their responsibility?
The war in Ukraine is, and unfortunately we have to state this, we need to realize who is the other side, who's the dark power. It's the Russia. And the Russia is not going to stop in Ukraine, for sure. And the other countries, the former republics of the USSR, and they're the members of the EU, or some of them are already NATO member nations, they are already under threat. Also, this Europe is where the Russian or the Soviet army have been dominating. It's also a risk for those countries, and that's also a challenge to the United States. We're currently having the use of phosphorus bombs, which is protected weapons, and Russia is openly saying about the use of, like a possible use of nuclear, chemical and biological weapons somewhere in Europe, if Europe would behave like that. So tomorrow, what do we do if, for example, Russia would be going for a NATO country? In that case, the United States, as the leaders of NATO, as the leaders of the alliance, in that case, they would have to send their own soldiers in accordance to Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. So they'll be fighting on the ground. So far as Ukraine stands, so far as Ukraine continues to defend, they're only helping us with the weapons, but not with the people.
So you're sitting here. We're having this conversation tonight. You're in your presidential palace. You're not hiding. You're not barricaded. You didn't leave the country. You're still here in your palace. Do you believe Russia is capable of hitting you here at home? And if they are, why haven't they?
I believe that, like on the overall, attempting to kill the leader of this or that country, it's not a force, it's a weakness, I would say. If you can't talk, then it's a weakness. The weakness is to start the war, and they've already demonstrated their weakness. If you can't occupy the other country, and you're retreating, that's a weakness. And if simultaneously you would like something to happen to the family of the other country's leader, then that's a political inability to do anything. So, of course, everyone understands that I'm located in here. You can throw bombs at this place, but what will you achieve? I mean, now he's almost isolated, but still, and I don't agree with that, but the world always keeps giving him a chance, because the sanctions are not imposed completely. They're giving him the gaps, and some of the leaders are saying that the Russian leader should be offered with a way out. But what you've mentioned, it's how to keep the face, not of Putin, but how to keep the face of them and their countries and their people, how not to turn into the terrorist state.
How frustrated are you with the response? I believe there are a lot of critics that say that the EU has been very soft in this moment, that they haven't supported Ukraine enough, that these sanctions, we've just heard that there are now going to be sanctions against Russian energy from the EU, but it's not far enough. There's got to be frustration there.
Well, I cannot be either frustrated or not frustrated. I don't have a time for that. All I want is, I want everything to come as fast as possible. I'd like to have a strong sanctions, not just something that you can simply demonstrate to your people or to media, so that their population or their cities would not keep pressing on their leaders. I want to have an open fight against Russia's aggression. Step by step, we've made some achievements, and a lot of European countries supporting us with these or that sanctions. But I believe that there couldn't be an army and good helmets and good bodyproof vests without the weapons, and vice versa. And the same for the sanctions. You cannot impose the sanctions at half strength. It's either you have them at full strength, then that's the case. If you've decided to go against Russia for torturing people, for committing atrocities, for committing rapes, you need to be strong, and that would demonstrate the strength of the Europe, that it's far stronger than a single country, even a country like Russia. But still, the Europe has to demonstrate this. The United States, the world, well, they're different. The world is not only about Russia and any other country. That shouldn't be the case. There's hundreds of countries.
Vladimir Putin, it seems pretty clear, is a war criminal. And yet at some point it's likely you'll have to negotiate with him to end this fight. We hope that it ends. How do you negotiate with Vladimir Putin, and are you willing to cede any territory to Russia to end this war?
We're not ready to cede any of our territories, because our territories is our independence, is our sovereignty. That's the issue. I mean, there are certain difficulties with some territories, there are some details, but all those victories, they could be, all those difficulties, they could be discussed. And those discussions would be necessary in order to stop the war, in order to start resolving those difficulties and challenges through diplomatic channels. Otherwise, it's not going to be working. If it's all about ultimatums, you have to cede a third of your territory and then we'll leave you come and leave you alive. This is not something we can agree on. That's why, fairly understandable that Russia's plans, that there's the disregard to our sovereignty, and there is the plans to completely control all the processes inside our country, including the geopolitical processes and internal processes. We clearly understand that Russia would not be able to do that in the nearest time in Ukraine. And then there is only one solution: occupation by force. And that's why the negotiations could be there, but there has to be a sense, there has to be a willingness on the part of Russia to have those negotiations. So we are not ready to accept any ultimatums and any seats with regards to their territories. We're not interested in what is happening in Russia. We're only interested in our own territory in Ukraine.
Understood. Sweden and Finland very likely joining NATO. Russia, Vladimir Putin has indicated that he is somehow okay with that, which I think surprised everybody, and it didn't make any sense. What did you make of that moment? Do you believe that he is okay with that? No.
Well, I don't believe him, and I don't believe this story. I believe that Putin is simply not ready to start several front lines and several operations at once. So I understand those tactical moves, and that seemed to be very clear. Sweden and Finland, and their decision, I believe they've made the right decision. That was the decision taken by their leaders and their people. I believe that's the correct decision, and I'm confident that it was Russia who made Sweden and Finland join NATO by taking this operation against Ukraine. I believe those countries have made a historical decision for those countries, but that won't be something that they can do simply. It would take more than their decision, more than their desire to join NATO, because the Putin cannot fight with everyone at the same time. So there's two responses to your question. First, it's either they're not strong enough in the capacities of their armed forces and they won't be able to hold on operations along all the front lines, or Russia is simply lying.
Understood. Your country has been kept out of NATO by not meeting their standards. Do you accept that? Does that anger you, your position?
Well, that makes me angry. Because I believe there is no justice in that position. Look, bad leaders would say like that. And who are the bad leaders? The bad leaders is those who have different people weaker than him close to him. And who's the strong leader? The one who's confident, and that's why he has wise and strong people around him. And he's not afraid that those strong people can eat him alive and have on his position, because the strengths of the people, the strengths of a nation is about the strengths of the people. So the NATO, the alliance, is not accepting Ukraine for a long time. It's demonstrating its weakness, because we are a strong country, and by our presence in the alliance we will be able only to consolidate the alliance, to have more capacities. We're offering the alliance an advantage if compared to Russia and some other empires, and that's it. We're not taking anything, we're giving. That's an example, because now our people are fighting. We are the defensive perimeter. We are this strong defensive perimeter. It's not something conventional. It's not something natural. That's the physical barrier made up of our people. That's my thought.
They point to the history of corruption in this country, which you have said you want to fight. Were you making progress in that fight up until this war threw you off?
Well, speaking of corruption, I'd say we've implemented a lot of reforms. We've created a range of anti-corruption bodies. We've made sure we've resolved a lot of issues with regards to the constitutional courts and constitutional judges. We've restored the operation of anti-corruption agencies. We have a digital country. We've made a lot of steps in order to digitalize our country, and that digitalization, it removes the involvement of the officials, it removes a lot of bureaucracies. So in many services we've already have the digital services and not public officials, and we've started the judicial reform. We've started a lot of efforts, and in the beginning of the war a lot of people who were distributing corruption, they simply left our country, frankly speaking. So I guess the war has cleared, so to say, our country from those people. And if we could be compared with the other countries and looking at the swiftness of the reforms in terms of the way how fast we've implemented, I would say that we are among the 10 top countries in terms of the reforms.
In American history books, we read about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. They say that during wars that they have fought, that they've felt a divine intervention. They say that they have felt themselves come closer to God in those moments. Have you had any experience like that over the last few months?
Well, you won't be able to have a victory over Russia without the God, because we understand that we are fighting for the good, for the light, and the God is with us. The God is on our side. And I've talked to many people, and even those of our citizens who never believed in God, who believed only in science. I know some of the young people, IT experts, well, after the attack of Russia against us, all those people, they clearly understand that this is a big support, the support coming from the God to our state, to our people. But you know, people tend to say that there is some divine power somewhere in the sky that supports our country, which another country, a very large country, very capable country, is willing to destroy. And we believe that the God is on our side, and that means that we will be victorious for sure.